The Awakening, the Revised Edition by Lilac. Chapter 34, Departure for Hoth. Before I get started, sorry if you can hear water in the background, it's horrible weather today. Padme stuffed the last of the baby things into the travel case, and tried in vain to close the overstuffed case. She had learned quite quickly in the last 3 years that there was no such thing as packing light when you had a baby, and even less so now that they had a baby and a toddler. She threw her petite self down on the case, sitting on it quite uncomfortably, with no success in getting it to close. It was at that point she heard her husband chuckle. She looked up and saw him standing there as he buttoned his tunic. She blew a stray curl out of her vision, and took a second to admire how handsome her husband was, as she often did. He looked at her, his gorgeous sapphire eyes dancing with playfulness. "Well, this probably looks quite ungraceful," she mentioned. "Actually, you're as breathtaking as usual," he replied. She huffed. "You're sweet, my love, but I'm a mess," she said, being that she was still in her nightgown and her curls were messy from sleep. He gave her his trademark smirk and gently helped her off the case before pressing down on it with what looked like no effort and snapped it closed. She looked up at him and smiled. "I'm so lucky to have such a big, strong, handsome husband to help me with things like this." "Thank you," she said as she snaked her arms around his neck. "Anything for you," he replied as their lips met passionately. "Come on, I'll make you some breakfast before we go to work," Padme said as they headed downstairs. She would finish packing for their trip later. Tomorrow morning, they would be journeying to Hoth for their 3rd visit and live meeting with the Alliance Council on the cold, barren world. As they walked down the hall towards the stairs, they stopped at their 3-year-old son's room and peeked in. Sure enough, Jaden was awake and playing with his toys. His parents watched as he giggled and floated his toys around the room. They glanced at each other, and Anakin had a worried look on his face. "I'm going to have to start training him soon," Anakin lamented. "Not if you don't want to. We're his parents, and we get to decide if we want him learning this early or not," Padme told him. "I know, but if people start seeing him using the Force like this in public, they'll start asking questions, and it could lead to us getting discovered. I just want him to be a kid for a while. I want him to have a wonderful childhood, grow up in a loving home with 2 parents that love him and love each other. I want him to have all the things I never had, and that I was denied giving to Luke and Leia," Anakin said. "You already have," Padme replied, as Jaden looked up at them and grinned. "Morning, Mummy," he called. "Morning, sweetie. Let's put the toys down and go downstairs for breakfast," Padme said. Jaden did as she asked and toddled to them. Padme lifted him up into her arms and she kissed him. "Morning, Daddy," Jaden said. He smiled. "Morning, buddy," he replied as he ruffled his son's sandy blonde hair. "You worry too much. We're all happy, and that's thanks to you," she told her husband. "I know. I guess I'm just afraid of the bounty on my head cheating you and the kids out of that happiness," Anakin replied. She kissed him softly. "As long as we're together, we'll always be happy, and with you protecting us, we'll never have to worry about not being together," Padme assured him. "You're right. I'll make sure of it, and we're going to let our baby boy be a kid, and we'll worry about his training when he's old enough to make that decision on his own. Master Yoda won't agree with this decision, but he's our son, and we'll decide how best to raise him, and that goes for our baby girl too," Anakin stated, establishing his final stance, thanks to her love and encouragement. She suspected that his unsure attitude a moment ago, in regards of Jaden's early and amazingly easy use of the Force, had stemmed from his latest meeting with Master Yoda and Mace. The 2 elder Jedi, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, were all that was left of the Jedi, and thus technically made up the new council. Luke was training, but Yoda had made his opinion clear on that matter. He considered Luke too old to be trained, He considered Luke to be too old to be trained, and was leery of Luke's attachments, just as he had always been leery of Anakin's strong attachments. He had been more than a little miffed to learn about their marriage. It was obvious that both Yoda and Mace thought Jaden should begin training as soon as possible, and though Anakin refused to admit it, she could bet that Yoda even suggested that Jaden had been trained by someone other than Anakin, and away from them, with Mace most likely. The old Anakin would have lost his temper at the suggestion of something like that, but her husband had become much more level-headed as he aged. He probably hadn't lost his temper, but had certainly made it perfectly clear that their son would remain with his parents. End of discussion. To say that Anakin was fiercely protective of them would have been the understatement of the century, but it was that overprotectiveness that would ensure no one would ever tear them apart. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Jaden announced. She smiled and kissed his forehead. "Okay, let's go have breakfast while your sister sleeps," Padme said, referring to their baby, as the three of them went downstairs. Rush Clovis entered the expensive, high-end restaurant located in a very rich, aristocratic section of the Cloud City. He was meeting with Senator Gavin Minara and his aunt, former Senator Kyla Minara, and just by meeting with two people who were loyal to Palpatine, he was committing treason against the rebellion. But Rush Clovis had always sought first and foremost to protect himself and his interests. He wasn't meeting with them to betray the location of the rebellion, but only to possibly learn more about the construction of the Death Star. He could then take that information back to the Alliance and solidify his allegiance, which was always in question. He knew this risky way to do it, but if he got any viable information, he could prove himself to the leaders of the Alliance, and more importantly, Padme. On her last two visits to Hoth, Clovis had unfortunately been travelling, or at home, and he was sure it was no accident that the timing of her visits had been hidden from him. But she would be arriving on Hoth again in 2 days, and he would be there this time. He knew a more sane man would have long ago accepted that she was married to someone else, and moved on. But he couldn't. Not when she was married to that unworthy Jedi. A former slave, as he had learnt by prying into confidential files. It sickened him that a former queen like Padme was stuck with him. If Padme wanted a real hero, then he was going to give her one by getting invaluable information. If that meant becoming a double agent and seducing Kyla Minara, then that's exactly what he would do. Little did Clovis know, his arrogance was blinding him, and playing both sides could possibly lead to certain disaster. He knew the risks, but he believed through his arrogance that he could handle it. "Senator Clovis, it is so lovely to see you again," Kyla said flirtatiously as she raised her hand. Clovis bowed gracefully to her and kissed the back of it. "Kyla, you look stunning, as always," Clovis lied, as she had become completely pulled in by his charm. Time had been somewhat kind to her. She was still beautiful, though nothing compared to the level of beauty Padme possessed. But time had graced her with silvering through her raven hair, and a few more wrinkles than he was used to. Despite his infatuation and borderline obsession with Padme Amidala, he refused to use Skywalker as her last name. He was still quite the ladies' man, and got what he deemed a lot of attention from many females, and took full advantage of his ability to charm them. Only Padme remained the only one he had never been able to charm into his bed, and perhaps that was why she fascinated him so, and why he wanted her so badly. "Oh, Rush, you always were the flatterer," Kyla giggled as her nephew approached. "Oh, Rush, you do remember my nephew Gavin, don't you?" Kyla said. "Of course. It's good to see you again." Rush said, shaking his hand. You as well, Senator. I was glad to hear that the rumours of you joining the rebellion were untrue. Gavin replied. Most untrue, I assure you. I was saddened when I learned that Padme Amidala had defected to them, even though I was happy to hear that she was alive. I had hoped that she would join us. Rush said sadly. Oh, poor thing. I remember how she broke your heart all those years ago. She was a fool to choose that Jedi over you. I don't think I would make the same mistake if I were given the chance to be with a man such as you. Kyla purred and Rush hid a feral smirk as he felt Kyla's hand on his leg. This foolish woman hadn't even been in the same room for 5 minutes with him, and she already wanted to take him to her bed. That is most kind of you to say, and truly humbling coming from a woman such as you, dear Kyla. But I'm not so sure most women would agree. Skywalker seems to capture hearts of young women wherever he goes. Rush said. Well, I'll admit that he is quite dashing and handsome. But for me, it would be like sleeping with the help. A woman like me only commits herself to men worthy enough in her own class. Kyla said, eyeing him seductively. Now who's the flatterer? Rush joked, and they laughed together as the wine arrived. Once the waiter left, Gavin spoke. I don't think Skywalker will be a problem much longer. I heard Vader doubled the bounty on his head. The word is that the Emperor Palpatine wants him taken out before the completion of the second Death Star. They're worried he'll find a way to destroy it if they let him live much longer. Gavin said. And where is the second Death Star? Rush asked. No one knows. Not even the highest-ranking officials on Coruscant. They're too afraid of the location getting back to the rebels. But I have heard there is some kind of protective shield around this one, and the only way to get past it is Imperial clearance codes issued by the Admiral, aboard Vader's Super Star Destroyer, Gavin said. Well, it seems I shouldn't have to worry about Skywalker then. No one is going to give him clearance. Besides, with a doubled bounty on his head, I suspect the moment Skywalker steps out of hiding, he'll be a dead man. Rush surmised. To the demise of the rebellion and the restoration of peace, Gavin toasted as they clinked their glasses together. As Rush sipped on his wine, he was confident more than ever that he could easily play both sides at the same time, work towards his own personal goals. Padme sat at her desk in the den, doing the paperwork and books for her husband's thriving, successful business. She smiled as she heard Jaden make his best speeder sounds as he played nearby. And, truthfully, this was the happiest Padme had ever been in her entire life. Raising her kids and working in a business with her husband was far more fulfilling than any of her days as a senator. She and Anakin were so in love, and that love continued to grow and strengthen to the point that she knew it had no bounds. They couldn't wait to be together, and one of the best parts of the day was now approaching. She would be going into town with the kids to have lunch at the shop with Anakin. She put her data pad down as she heard the baby coo on the baby monitor. Bella is up for her nap. So let's go upstairs and get her ready so that we can go and have lunch with Daddy. Padme called to her son. At the mention of his father, Jaden stood up and took her hand. I want to go see Daddy, he said. Me too, Padme replied as they went upstairs and into the nursery where her beautiful baby girl was standing up in her crib, holding onto the bars. It was the newest trick she had learned. She was 8 months old now, and was already crawling and starting to talk. So Padme knew it would not be long now before she could start to walk, especially since Jaden had walked early too. Did you have a good nap, sweetheart? She cooed as she lifted her daughter into her arms. Mama! Bella called. Padme laid her on the changing table and changed her diaper before putting her in a sundress. There's my pretty girl, all dressed. Now let's go and see Daddy. Padme said as she picked her up and kissed her brown-haired head. While she had Padme's brown eyes and soft features, she had Anakin's sapphire eyes. Jaden bounded excitedly down the stairs and into the kitchen. "Nana!" Jaden called as he saw Jobel preparing a basket that they would be taking for lunch. Jobel smiled down at her grandson and picked him up, before sitting him on the counter. "There you are, little one. Let's get your shoes on," Jobel said as she put them on him. "Thanks, Mum," Padme said as she came into the room. "You know I love helping out with the kids. In fact, I really wish you would reconsider taking them with you to that dreadful planet." Jobel said, "I know, Mum, but Anakin and I really want to have them with us. We'll be fine," Padme promised. "It is far too dangerous for you to be taking the babies with you. Please, Padme," Jobel pleaded. "I'm sorry, Mother, but Anakin and I will be taking them with us," Padme replied firmly. While they got along for the most part now, there would still be many things Padme and Jobel would never see eye to eye on. "Oh, all right," Jobel said in disappointment as Padme took the basket and walked towards the back door. "I know you're worried, Mother, but I promise we'll be perfectly safe as long as we're with Anakin," she promised as she took Bella out to the speeder with Jaden following them out. "Daddy!" Jaden called as he hopped out of the speeder and ran towards his father. Anakin and Luke smiled as they wiped their hands, and Anakin caught him just as he jumped into his arms. "There's my boy," Anakin said as he hugged him. "Mummy said we're going on a trip tomorrow," Jaden said. "Mum is right. We're going to Hoth tomorrow," Anakin told him. But does that mean you and Mummy will be in boring meetings all the time?" Jaden whined. Anakin chuckled. "Well, we will have to go to a few meetings, and you're right, they are very boring. But we'll have the whole hyperspace trip to do fun things on the Falcon, and there will still be plenty of time for fun when we get to the base too," Anakin said. "Promise?" he asked. Anakin nodded. "Promise." "Yeah, and besides, while Mum and Dad are in meetings, you can hang out with your big brother," Luke told him. "Yay!" Jaden cheered. Anakin sat him down at the table. Padme came in carrying a basket and Luke took it from her. "Hey, Mum," Luke greeted. "Hi, sweetheart," Padme greeted as Bella babbled something in baby speak to Luke. "And hello to you too, baby sister," Luke replied as he tickled her tummy, making her giggle. "There's two of my beautiful girls," Anakin said as he kissed Padme tenderly. "Hello to you too," she cooed. "Dad!" Bella called as she reached for him. He took her from Padme and kissed her hair. "Daddy's little girl, through and through," Padme mused. "Is Ahsoka coming?" Padme asked. Anakin nodded. "She and R2 should be back soon. I sent her to the parcel station to see if my parts order is here," Anakin replied. Usually Leia joined them too, but she had gone ahead to Hoth a few days ago with the Kenobi family, Rex and Sola. They had taken a different ship, and they were going aboard the Falcon to rendezvous with them on Hoth. Padme nodded as she saw that Luke was already eating. "Well, she better hurry, or she'll miss out. I think I packed enough food, but you never know with our eating machine," Padme joked. Anakin chuckled as they sat down and joined Luke. The next day, Anakin helped Han load the Falcon. He chuckled as he loaded 2 more travel cases full of the kids' stuff, in addition to 2 others he had already loaded. And this didn't include the travel cases Padme was packing with her stuff in it yet. His beautiful, loving wife simply didn't have the ability to pack lightly. In fact, he was pretty sure she didn't know what it meant to pack lightly. "Are you making fun of me?" Padme asked in a teasing tone as she dragged 2 more travel cases out of the house. "Never, but you do know we only plan to be gone a week, right, Angel?" he asked. "You never know. We could be delayed a few days, like last time. Remember that horrible snowstorm that made it impossible to leave the planet?" she asked. He nodded in concession. She had a point there. "Besides, there's no such thing as packing lightly with a baby and a toddler," she added as she pecked him on the lips. She had a point there too. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," she replied, as he lifted one of her travel cases and groaned teasingly. "What's in this thing?" he asked. She smacked his arm. "Oh, stop, it's not that heavy. For you, anyway," she scolded playfully, but then yelped in surprise as he pulled her into his arms and swept her up bridal style. "Oh, so the case is heavy, but I'm not?" she asked. He smirked. "Nope, you're as light as a feather," he replied as she melted against him, and the lips met in a passionate kiss. "Uh-oh, they're at it again," Luke teased as he carried his travel case up onto the ship. "Yep, I'll get the hose." Ahsoka joked as Anakin gave her a look of disdain. "Very funny, Snips," he replied with sarcasm as he placed Padme on her feet. "I think that's everything. Chewie and I are ready when you are," Han announced. "I'll get Bella if you round up Jaden." Padme told her husband. "Sure, take the easy one," Anakin joked. She giggled as he followed her inside where they found Jobel holding the baby. Padme sighed. "You should come with us, Mother," Padme suggested. "No, I'll only be in the way," Jobel replied, though Padme knew her refusal to go was simply her way of protesting their decision to take the children with them. "That's not true, and you're welcome to come," Anakin urged. "Thank you, Anakin, but I'll be fine here," she replied as she kissed Bella and then allowed Padme to have her, while Anakin went off to go and find Jaden. They boarded the Falcon, and about 10 minutes later, the ship left the atmosphere and entered the realm of hyperspace. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Yeah, I like that one. Nothing much to comment on, but I like it. So, but also, can we just say, Rush is one of the worst kinds of people, in my opinion. Playing both sides, he makes me think of Littlefinger, really. Actually, that's pretty apt for this fic. He's the Littlefinger. It's not quite as wide-reaching and people see straight through him, but still, you know. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, girls, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.